I'm doing a free webinar. It's a virtual session, and it's all about, you guessed it, being diagnosed with ADHD later in life. The webinar is called Now What? From Chaos to Clarity, Lessons from a Lifetime of Masking to Understand My ADHD. I'm going to cover what ADHD really looks like in adults and why so many are missed. I'll talk about the emotional roller coaster after diagnosis, from grief to relief, why ADHD isn't a superpower unless it is, why shame and burnout and masking show up and how to heal, practical strategies to support your brain, energy, and life. And I'm going to give you some next steps, helping you lead with more confidence and self-compassion. The Now What webinar will be free, but space is limited, and you can sign up right now at wisesquirrels.com/events, and I'll see you there soon. Welcome to Wise Squirrels, the podcast for late diagnosed adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Dave Delaney. Today, I've got a great episode lined up for you. Shout out to everybody on the Substack. Thank you for your paid Substack support. And even for you freebies, thank you for being there. Before we jump into the interview, I did want to tell you about our sponsor. Yes, we've got a great new sponsor, and I'm thrilled with the news. Wise Squirrels is sponsored by Inflow, the #1 science-based app to help you manage your ADHD. It's created by ADHD clinicians and psychologists, and their dedicated support system helps you understand your neurodivergent brain, build lifelong skills, and get things done. I've been using the app and I'm loving it. I like how the app asks you simple questions without overwhelming you, and it then walks you through the process of working on specific areas like time management or rejection sensitivity with friendly reminders, lessons, little mini podcast clips. It's a cool app. Do yourself a favor and visit wisesquirrels.com/inflow. Do it now or click the link in the description on the episode. Give it a try and check out their free ADHD traits assessment. It's free and it's right there. You're going to love it. And we thank Inflow for their support of Wise Squirrels. And now, here's my interview.
I'm Victoria Reyna. I am a licensed professional counselor in Texas, El Paso, Texas. So I call it Hola, Texas instead of Howdy, Texas, because we're way more on the Mexican side than what you think of, like cowboys and rodeos and all that stuff. We still have that, but it's very much like Hispanic. I have my own practice. I've had it since 2020, and from the start, it kind of happened on accident because of 2020. And then I became, started running this whole business. And of course, the ADHD way, I figured it out. This was before I got the diagnosis, but I figured it out. I figured out how to do a private practice when everyone was like, don't do private practice and don't do telehealth. And that was my only option in 2020. So like I did it and I figured it out.
Yeah.
And so I've been running Rising Perspective it was about, I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to be a therapist in general, I guess not really why I wanted to, but while I was in my master's program, I'm sitting in the diagnosis class, and they legit only gave us 20 minutes of ADHD. But in those 20 minutes, when they're walking through all of the symptoms, I have a 5-year-old at home who I'm like, this sounds very, very familiar. And this is like, are we supposed to relate to this? Like, is this normal? Is this not normal? And so that kind of like intrigued me of like ADHD. And that's kind of what made me follow down this ADHD trail, figuring out like first getting her diagnosed, and second, getting people to actually like pay attention to me, which was wild because I'm coming in with a master's in mental health. Like I should have some sort of idea of what I'm talking about, but like the struggle to get her diagnosed was ridiculous. And so when I finally figured it out, I was very, very blessed to have met a doctor who I love, so amazing. I had to go through a couple of them, but she was very open to trying medications and like listening to me, that we finally got Jay on a really good, like a regimen and all of that stuff. And so I was like, hey, like, I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so I started learning more and more about ADHD because I wanted to help my kid. So I started focusing mainly on ADHD, I would say about, I think it like slowly became a thing where I was like, okay, this is like for real, something that I just love. I'm very passionate. It works really well with my brain as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I didn't actually get diagnosed till like 2 years ago, of
Oh,
course,
wow. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
after the kid. So yeah, and it was because I went to the ADHD conference where I think I had the same like ideas and stigma of like, well, I have a master's program or I have a master's degree. I have it all together. And my family was like, no, you don't have it. You can't have it. Like you were always quiet. Your room was always clean.
Yeah.
Like you were just like, you're not like my kiddo was opposite, very hyperactive, running, very emotional, all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, there's no way. And so when I went to the conference and I'm like surrounded by other professionals that are with ADHD and they're still like, they're doing all the things and they're so creative and bright and all of that, but we're like running late and have our planners and like all the intensity that's underneath it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it definitely is there. So that's been cool. Kind of like being, I don't know, it's given me a whole different perspective, obviously. Um, it's funny because one of my clients, I would tell them like, oh yeah, like see, like I would show them my space. I was like, see, mine's a little disorganized too. And he's like, I don't think that's normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Like, oh, okay.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
so 2020, or you said you were diagnosed in 2022, you said? Or,
Yes,
okay.
2022.
And that was after attending the conference or?
I'm horrible with time and dates,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it was recently.
Yeah.
Because I think I've only done like medication for like a year and a half, probably.
Hmm.
So yeah. But I was
Yeah.
diagnosed before, believe it or not.
Oh,
But I was just
really?
like, but not like very, very like not like childhood for sure. It was
Yeah.
definitely like I was struggling with depression and all this other stuff. And they're like, oh, you it's something about it though didn't feel because of the questions that were asked. It was very, very like 5 questions, and then it's like, yeah, you probably
Yeah.
have ADHD, and I'm like, okay, cool, but it wasn't. I don't know. It just didn't feel legit in some way, and that's kind of like
Well,
go for it.
oh no, I was going to say, but it's also, I think, especially being newly diagnosed, like if you're struggling, which I have too, like if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or both, and then you also have ADHD, but you're undiagnosed, you don't know you have ADHD, or even if you have a feeling you do, you want the pain to stop, right? You want the
Yeah.
anxiety and depression to be treated because ADHD, like if you think about it just loosey goosey without knowing too much
Hmm.
about it, you would think, okay, well, ADHD, hyperactive, whatever.
Hmm.
It's not going to kill me. It's not the end of the world, but anxiety and depression are pretty serious, and we got to get to the bottom of those and treat those.
Hmm.
And again, always saying that I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on the internet.
Hmm.
But something I have learned is with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD, your life expectancy can be up to 13 years less,
Hmm.
according to
Yeah.
Dr. Russell Barkley. And part of what he talks about a lot is that you need to treat the root cause, the root problem, as well as, or in addition to, but you need to treat the root problem. So it's just, and the root problem often not for everybody who's suffering from anxiety or depression doesn't mean you have ADHD necessarily, but it is quite common. They're strange bedfellows, as they say, right? They're quite common as comorbidities that come along with ADHD. So again, if you don't treat the root cause, then you're only treating like the part of the problems, the anxiety and depression, but you're not treating what's causing it necessarily. At least that's my
Correct.
understanding.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think because of all of that, like that's it very much like led my whole journey of like what I do now currently, like what my practice looks like, kind of the training that I just did with my colleagues was because of like the difficulty that I had with as a mental health professional, right? Like I who feel some sense of knowledge of the mental health world and all of that, like there's always this like system difficulties, right? Like you go in the white coat sort of phenomena, right? Like you're not really knowing like, okay, like, yeah, you say I have just anxiety. Okay, cool. Like I'll listen to that versus like, there's something else there.
Yeah.
And so experiencing my own difficulty as well, like even going through life, I've always had anxiety. And then now, of course, as always, right, when you get the diagnosis, you're like, it makes all the sense. All the things are connecting, even like my parents and like everything.
Yes.
And so I had gone, I think when I was in the conference, they were talking about like the adult diagnosis and all of that stuff and all the work that they're doing to try to get the guidelines. And they had told us the statistics was like less than 50% of um, clinicians, providers, all of that can accurately know like the diagnosis, the symptoms, the I think it's like the prognosis, like all of that. Like they don't know the risk factors, like less than 50%, and that's like
Mm,
that's too much for how many
yeah.
people are struggling with this. And so knowing that, knowing like my experience, me and my colleague, it's Tamika and Paula. They're out in Kansas City, Nashville. They're all over the place. But we got together and we created this program so that we can train mental health professionals on all of that. So we can let them know about the symptoms, the diagnosis, like what are the strategies, what are the risk factors, like
That's
all of the
great.
things. Because we wanted to change that. Even if it was like 20 people, if it's like whoever, like we want that number to raise up as much
Yeah.
as possible because like we're everywhere, right? Like we are
Yeah.
struggling daily, and sometimes regular mental health therapy, if you don't have a background in ADHD, like it sometimes causes more damage than it can help, unfortunately, because
Yeah.
there's just that, like, just do it, just like get a planner and figure it out and like
I
just
was
write
told
it
so many
out.
times for the longest time, I had a post-it note stuck on my wall that said, you know what to do, because I was in different like mastermind groups with, fellow entrepreneurs working on different things who, I became close with and friends with, and they kind of ganged up on me one day. This is before I was diagnosed, in a good way, in a loving and supporting way. But they were like, Dave, you keep talking about all this stuff. You know what to do. You just need to do
Mhm,
it. Just do it. You know what to do,
mhm.
and I had it on my wall for the longest time. I'm like, I know what to do. Why can't I do it?
Yeah.
What is happening here? Where is the disconnect? And
Yeah.
it took me years to find out after that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Well, it
got it.
makes me think. Oh, sorry. I
No,
was
go
gonna say
ahead.
it makes me think of like the Russell Barkley quote of like it's not knowing what to do, it's doing what you know, right? Like that's
Yeah.
what ADHD is. It's like we know what to do. Of course we do. Like I have a whole list of things that I need to do right now, and I'm like, but it's that one thing all the way back there that's like good. It's keeping me from doing all the other things, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from the training is like it's not just what's in front of you. A lot of the times, like people have a long to-do list or even just one thing on their list and it's like, well, I didn't do it. And then they feel bad. And my strategy is always like, okay, well, what's the barrier? Like what was it? Why didn't we do that? Like how do we figure out? And usually there's like a trail of a bunch of other things, or it's like the thing was too big and we did do the thing, but we just did a little piece of it.
Yeah, I love that. So we did, yeah,
Mhm.
just kind of breaking it apart in a way, right? And addressing, like, yeah, to your point, like why, you know, yeah, what is stopping you from doing the thing you want to do? And also, like, to the point about Russell Barkley too, though, like when you work for yourself and you're the sole proprietor of your business, as I am,
Me too.
there is like there's also that whole like making money piece of the business,
Mhm.
right? Where it's like, yeah, but all I want to do is my Wise Squirrels podcast and like
Yeah.
talk to awesome people like yourself and help remove stigmas and do presentations and talk about ADHD to like educate people. So everybody just pay me money to do that, will you? It
Right?
doesn't,
That would be
I mean,
amazing.
it doesn't work that way. So there is that,
Mhm.
like, what to do piece. And I'm a recovering marketer. I know a ton about digital marketing and all that stuff. And yet there's so much that I'm like, I just, yeah, I can't get to that part. Right.
Yeah.
Which is part of that challenge, but it is good. Like, I like how you grouped up. Where were the Kansas City? Did you say Nashville?
So Kansas City, there's three of us. We're connected in some crazy, of course, ADHD way. Um, so we were in Kansas City. We did the first one here in El Paso, and so Paula's going to be moving, so she's not going to be in Nashville. So we'll probably be either in Waco or somewhere else. But
Okay.
the idea is that we
Bummer.
want to keep doing this. I know.
I'm in Nashville. So
You're
I
in
was like,
Nashville.
I know.
Well, we could go.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah.
We could
All
set it
right.
up.
I always recommend listeners, like if they're not diagnosed yet, when they go see their doctor, which they absolutely should. I mean, there's a free assessment on wisesquirrels.com. I don't see the results. It's just redirected an assessment. But again, as it states there, like regardless of the results of that, online assessment, you really should speak to a doctor regardless. But I was going to say, when you talk to your doctor, I think one of the things that I've learned, luckily I didn't have this experience, but I've heard of it happening a lot, which is basically ask your doctor before you talk about it specifically, before you getting into like, I think I have ADHD, ask your doctor what they think about ADHD.
Yes.
Because some doctors will roll their eyes and be like, unfortunately, there's quacks out there who will roll their eyes and say, it's not real. It's just, over, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And from that it's time to find a new GP. Like it's time to find a new doctor, because they also might not believe in cancer or vaccines or something. Right. so at that point, like if they don't believe in ADHD, okay, that's a good thing. That's a good conversation to have with your doctor, regardless of whether you think you have ADHD. Just what do you think about ADHD? And if they say, it's a bunch of malarkey, then yeah, it's time to find a new doctor. So I think what you're doing is commendable, because doctors, and in doctors' defense, I mean, there's no way for them to know everything
Right.
about everything. It's like asking like a auto mechanic to like reprogram the computer on the car.
Yeah.
Being a general practitioner, I mean, you're a general practitioner. I mean, you've earned your stripes for sure, but you may not be an expert in everything. So it is important to educate folks. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How's that going?
I love it. We've gotten a lot of good feedback because, again, it's so prevalent, right? Like most every therapist has at least one ADHD that they are treating.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's, again, that approach is so different. I've had to like adjust my approach, where at first it felt very almost like I wasn't doing anything.
Right.
Because it was like I do this like time audit with my clients of just like, let's literally look at what your schedule is going to look like. And I throw like, okay, when do you feed your dog? When do you eat? But there's also like this emotional component that I love, because as a therapist, right? Because sometimes it is negative thoughts. Sometimes it is just like this emotional part that keeps you stuck from doing the thing, right? The thing that you know how to do. It's just this emotional part that we have to then have the capacity to go back and like, well, where did this start? Right. So I love that I have that ability, but also the time thing, right? Like you mentioned, like providers don't have, unfortunately, because of like systems, like they don't have time to do the diagnosis. They don't have time to look into ADHD a bit more. They only have 15 minutes maybe with their client or their patients. And so one of the things that I've kind of encouraged these people, mental health professionals, when I'm with them, is like build relationships. Like I have a really good relationship with some psychiatrists of like, I know you guys don't have the time, but you have the medication tools that are often helpful, but I have the time. Like I do not mind. I love sitting with my clients and talking with them. And like, that's what we do. It's just, it fits perfectly. And so it's been helpful. And I think one of the things that as mental health professionals, that at least something that I experience as well, is like that difficulty with doctors and therapists in some sense, right? Or like the levels of education and sometimes the pushback of like, well, I have a higher degree than you. It's like, yes, I appreciate that. Like we have our roles for sure, but let's work together, right? We can work together. We're all trying to aim for the same thing. Like, so
you also took an oath to become a doctor, right? Like there is an oath. And so if you're not, and I forget what the oath is, but you get that. I mean, generally it's, helping people.
Yeah. Like do no harm and
do no harm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's being open to these other folks out there as well. And I like how, well, this is part of the reason why, like I have a therapist who specializes in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and who I meet with once a month. I have a psychiatrist who primarily doesn't want to talk about any of that stuff. She's more, I mean, she's big into medicine, and so she manages my medication, making sure that both, you know, my anti-anxiety, antidepressant meds are jiving well with my stimulants for my ADHD. And so doing that. But then I have an ADHD coach as well. And it's sort of that combination, I think. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain levels, like, you know, an ADHD coach shouldn't legally, I think, even shouldn't be talking about like psychology or things unless they're certified. And certainly, yeah. But I think all these things go together to have a good plan. And of course, accessibility is something that's I know near and dear to your heart, and something that just because of whether it's budget, whether it's location, you know, whether it's cultural things, like it can be challenging to get the support you need. And with full disclosure, we did have a conversation previously, and I totally butchered the recording. So you've been gracious enough to join me again. But yeah, tell me a little bit about, El Paso, but also like what challenges people are facing, not just there, but anywhere really, as it pertains to ADHD diagnosis, treatment, that kind of thing.
Hey, this is Dr. George Sachs, co-founder of Inflow, a proud sponsor of Wise Squirrels. If you have ADHD, you know how tough it can be to stay on top of, well, mostly everything. That's why we created Inflow, an app designed by expert clinicians and people with ADHD to help you understand your brain, build habits that actually stick, and feel less alone in the process. Get the support you need with Inflow. Head to wisesquirrels.com/inflow to check it out.
Yeah, so El Paso is about 80% Latin, Hispanic. It's so interesting. I've lived here my whole life, and whenever I go to a different city and I see like all different cultures, it's like mind blown to me because I'm so like in El Paso, it's just Mexicans, like with us.
Yeah.
There's other races as well, but it's majority. And so with that though comes already a stigma about mental health in general. Like everything you can just like pray about it, or like you're just not doing enough, or you're messing with the wrong people or whatever. And then you have ADHD, which is like even harder to kind of accept in the community. And I think that's the struggle that I had as well. Just like, that's just kids. Like, they just run around. They're just, because it is more prevalent in Hispanic communities. And there's a lot of reasons why you can like kind of maybe come to those conclusions of like resources, and maybe where the environmental situations where they were living, and like poverty, and just access to into medical systems in general, right? Like because of all of that. And so there's like a huge line of undiagnosed ADHD that is hugely prevalent in El Paso, but we're just not talking about it. And there's this really, really bad problem with drinking and driving here in El Paso. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but it's like to a point where sometimes I'm scared to leave my house because it's so bad. Like there's really, really, at night, obviously, but it's so bad of just like the impulsive decision of just getting in the car, not really thinking of the long-term consequences, or even the substance use in general, that talking to other professionals, talking to, I don't know, I'm my ADHD brain of just like, I see all these things and I'm putting them all together. And there's this really big social media platform here in El Paso that like everybody watches them, everybody listens to them. And they're the ones that are posting all of this stuff of like, this is an accident again. And I reached out to them and I'm like, hey, like, I'm an ADHD therapist. Like, I gave them all the stats. I'm like, I think something's going on here. I also have interns that used to work at a substance use clinic, and they were telling me like, you can see that like they have symptoms, but they're not talking about it. They're not looking at it. And so hopefully we're trying to like figure out a way to like, I don't know, start something. Because yeah, like there is that, I guess that missing piece, and like I see it neon green of like we need to
Yeah.
do something. Like it's here.
Yeah.
I could see the untreated ADHD, and then all the research with Russell Barkley of like people are dying, unfortunately, because
Mm.
of these things. And if we don't talk about it, then we can't do anything. And so my other hat is that I do run a chapter of CHAD here in El Paso, and I've reached out to FitFam, that's what they're called. And they've been posting some of our meetings. So I'm hoping
Great.
like slowly that kind of grows some of this information out there, and we begin to kind of just share more about ADHD as much as possible. Because yeah, it's you think of the world not knowing about it, and then you add a little city, and we're not too small, but a group of Hispanics, where there's even more resistance. Another
Mhm.
cool thing that we're working on is so one of the first things that you should do when a child gets diagnosed with ADHD is parent training. And so we don't have parent training at all, but the other part is Spanish. I am not very good at Spanish, depends on who you ask, but I do have some amazing colleagues who are really good at Spanish. We've been
Yeah.
working with El Futuro out. I don't know where they are. It's horrible, but I know it's another state, and I
That's
talk
okay.
to them all the time.
Yeah, that's okay.
But they worked with Duke to create this parent training program that's completely in Spanish, and we're hoping
Great.
to bring it in El Paso
That's
so
great.
that we can provide that, because that in itself, even our parent support groups that we have, just I love seeing like the switch in, like you could just see it in like parents when it's like, oh, I get
Yeah.
it. And so
What's stopping you from bringing it right now to El Paso? Is it budget?
probably, yeah, budget and resources. I'm
Yeah.
single mom, 3 kids, have my practice, have a caregiver of my mom. Like there's a lot of things, and I'm like, I want to do it all, but
Yeah.
also knowing how to do it. But it's in the works. So I'm hoping. It's literally been like 2 months probably that we've been working on it. So I
Is the
believe it'll happen.
program is the program administered through therapists, or is it like actually like a recorded thing that people can watch to learn? Like
So
virtual
it's a
access?
they're running it through Zoom. We want to do it in person. But it's basically like a curriculum that you follow, and we'd be running it.
Mm.
Um, so that's the plan. That's the goal.
I love it.
So
I love it.
yeah, I
And
know. I'm excited.
how can people we're not wrapping up here, but how can people support you that way? Like, are there ways to, like, do you already have the curriculum in place, or are you still waiting? Are you still raising money to be able to buy that curriculum in order to then facilitate?
Yeah, we're still raising money to buy the curriculum so that we can facilitate. But another part of it is like the ability to not charge, because that's the goal, right? We don't want to charge for the time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so ideally we would like to find some sponsors, like somebody in the community who, because like doctors, I'm like, well, it'll help you guys like pay
Yeah.
for your clients in some way or program. Because it's kind of like even schools, we're thinking like there has to be like a program where like they can see this research is there, like they're backed by Duke, and it's like they have shown like the progress, and like that Spanish piece is so crucial, because like executive functions, how do you say that in Spanish?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I have no idea. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like already laid out. It's like, it's really, really good. And so that's the second piece. So basically, we're hoping to get some sponsorship in some sense so that we can provide it for people free of charge. And then, but yeah, so like how people can help is basically one, if they're local in El Paso or even Las Cruces, because we're really close to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and you want to give your time, like volunteer for Chad, we would love that. And we also like accept donations as well to Chad if you would like to do so,
Mm-hmm.
um, on the Chad website, for because it's a nonprofit. So basically, if there's any donation wise, that's the way to go.
So if somebody donates to Chad, that money will be transferred back to you to work on this program. I would imagine that just goes to Chad, or does Chad have its own landing page for this?
So they have a specific. We just talked about this actually. That's another hat that I wear.
Yeah.
I'm on the chapter advisory board, and we were talking about like kind of some of that stuff, because It is national, but a lot of these, like some cities need more help than others.
Yeah.
And so they've been trying to, whenever somebody does a donation and they want it to go specifically to a certain chapter, they can say that and it will. So it'll go to that chapter. There's also, I think that's the only way that way, at least for now. We're working on other ways to do so. But
so this is my recovering marketer hat.
yeah,
And
love it.
when it comes to marketing, the less steps it takes to have somebody do the thing you want them to do, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a form, for example, first name, last name, email, date of birth, city, first child, blah, blah, too many questions. Nobody's going to fill it out. Right. So like what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, but like what you're saying is that in order for people to help support this program, they need to go to Chad's website to find the form, donate money, and then put in your name in the, who I'm donating to. Right. Mm-hmm. So the problems I see there are, one, like if somebody forgets to fill out that section, or they don't know specifically what to put. Do they put Victoria? Do they put El Paso? Do they put, right? Like, mm-hmm. And so if it's a specific program, like if it has a specific name, that would also help. I'm almost tempted to say like, sorry, I'm totally like the digital.
Oh, I love it.
I'm almost tempted to say like, you create a landing page about this in mm-hmm. Spanish and maybe English too, but whatever. You create a landing page on your site or one of your partner sites. And the form is notes. Like, do you want to get involved or do you want to support us with just an email address? Right. And their name. And then when they fill out that email address, that's when you can follow up with them by explaining exactly how to get involved, which is step 1, go to Chad. Step 2, fill in the form. Step 3, add whatever amount of money. Step 4, make sure you put this in the how did you hear about us field so we actually get the money. Mm-hmm. Something like that. But the reason why you do it that way is so that you do that. And then because they filled out that email, that initial form, you can follow up with them and say, hey, did you have any trouble using the form? Or, thanks for your donation or whatever. So you can so you can follow up with them and keep in touch and also keep them informed, bless you, so that when it does launch, you'll be able to reach out to them and just say, guess what? You helped and we're launching. So yeah, my wheels are turning on it. So I'm like, I like problem solving, but that's
I love that too.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that. Another thing that would help as well is just like being a member of Chad, where whenever you put your location, like the closest, like wherever you're at, like you're supporting that. And I think like $9 a month of your membership goes to, which is like $9, but it's still something, right? And you do get access to other, like a national support groups that they will have. You get like discounts to the Chad conference. You get like a whole database of ADHD information, and Chad is like one of the leading like research. Well, they were before CDC stuff, but that's where like the headquarters of it all. So like you get a lot and you also help us out as well. So that's another way to do so. But
did CDC cut off funding for Chad? Is that what happened?
I don't know entirely how much, but I know like it was, I don't know if it was completely, because I don't know if like CDC is completely done. So I don't know. But it did affect Chad because we were run by the CDC. We got a lot of money a lot of the money that we got was from the government and all of those programs. So that's super scary just because like it's exciting that we were doing something for ADHD. And now that feels like it, like, I don't know, there's like a pause there and we're like kind of uncertain, like a lot of the stuff in the world of what's going to happen, which makes me worry about the 504s and the IEPs and like all of these things that are changing and the insurance when it's already been an issue with, especially in El Paso, the insurance issue. And so like the gaps, right? Like if we don't have access to care, if we don't have the ability to get our medication and then like the support as well. But so it's a great reason why, if you do have the time, if you do have the capacity, if you want to do something like volunteer at your local Chad, because we're trying to do good work and it makes a difference when you're able to like share more information about ADHD, or your experience with other parents as well who are barely experiencing some of this and struggling. So kind of that ripple effect makes a huge difference. Even if it's like an hour or so of your month, like it makes a difference.
You said something a while ago, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something about, and I might have misunderstood you, that Hispanic people tend to be higher with ADHD. Did I misunderstand that? Tell me about that, because I've never heard that. I don't know.
Yeah, and so there's more, like there's a higher prevalence of ADHD in the Hispanic community.
Interesting.
And I've heard a lot, and these are all like speculation, right? These are all like from my own sort of like brainstorm of stuff. But I know like listening to some of Russell Barkley's talks about environmental factors, right? We know like lead and all of those things attribute, not that they cause it, right? But they definitely don't make it any better. But also like the season, I had heard something from Russell Barkley of like the seasons of when you were born. So like if you were born, if your mom was pregnant during winter, right? She was probably sick. She probably got sick. She probably had, she probably had infections quite a bit. And so, like, how that impacted the development of the baby in utero and their brain. And so, if you think about stuff like that, and you think about, and this is just Hispanic community, and it's not just Hispanic community, it's also like anybody that's living in poverty. But the ability to, like, again, go to the doctor if you do have an infection, if you do have flu, if you do have something like getting better, or even being excess, like having to continue to work instead of being at home, right? When you're pregnant, or when you are as a kid, right? Like where you're spending time with, and like the houses that you're living in. And so all of those things, those environmental factors. There's also been like the idea of like people that live in poverty living closer to like unhealthy areas, right? Where there's like smokestacks and all of that stuff, and like all of those toxins. So that's a guess that I have, a very scientific sort of guess.
Has pollution been connected to ADHD diagnosis? Like I know, my understanding is that like it's primarily hereditary, but that with any sort of, or not any, but with some blunt force to the head, that can also cause ADHD, to my understanding. And again, I'm not an expert here, but that's my understanding, is with some blunt like head trauma that could cause. But for the most part, my understanding is it's mainly hereditary. But are you saying that there are studies out there that show that there is like I mean, it's not it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, there's an array of different things, and not to downplay, even if pollution or lead in the water or what have you causes ADHD or not, because it certainly is not good for you. And we know there's developmental delays and cancers and all sorts of terrible things. So not to downplay the severity of that, but is there a connection with ADHD and pollution that way?
It seemed, it's very like, what is the word? It's hard to kind of like separate them, right? Because when you think about like genealogy in general and just like hereditary, like anything, right? Like as you're developing and let's say you do get a toxin of some sort, like it affects your DNA, which then like in generations still affects your DNA. So it's hard to figure out like, was it at one point, right, that somebody got some sort of like really lead poisoning and that affected their development, and then like that continues on, right? I know there's a lot of studies on that right now of like how that is connected, and how like there's this generational sort of, like, because that's what it is, right? Like at some point there's a mutation, and the development of the future generations continues to change. And if they're affected in some way, right? Because then that brings into like drug use as well, right? It doesn't mean that that's the reason for it, but if that doesn't make it any better, right? And so one of the things that we talk about too in this presentation is nutrition, right? Like, especially with ADHD, we do not have very good nutrition. Our kids, I'm one chicken nugget. I still eat chicken nuggets to this day. But like the nutrition and what we need to develop, like what our brain needs to function effectively, we need protein. We need like all these like GABAs, and like there's so many things that we're still not doing effectively that are potentially making our ADHD more prevalent because we're
Yeah.
not sleeping very well. We have social media, we have like all of these things that are not letting us meet our potential. And so it doesn't mean the ADHD is not there, but like we're going to feel it and see it a lot more than
Yeah. And
maybe we would have.
it gets back to that 13-year
Hmm.
number from Russell Barkley, because to your point, I mean, it's not just like you're mentioning, like driving drunk, right? Like drinking and driving, where, even just driving sober with undiagnosed
Yeah.
ADHD could make you a more dangerous driver because you're not thinking, you're driving too fast. You change a lane without looking, checking your blind spot. And so that does play a role in it as it pertains to like alcohol or drugs or smoking or whatever. Like, because we lack dopamine, our brains are craving dopamine. We're trying to find it in other ways. And, as soon as you start, and I drank too much and smoked too many cigarettes back a million years ago. But again, it gets into that addictive thing where you become more excessive as well. And so, And again, that gets back to like we were talking about with the root cause or the root, problem. And I remember Russell Barkley was talking about that. Like he was saying how something to the effect of like, if you're trying to quit smoking, you could do all the things to try to quit smoking, which, Nicorette or whatever it's called, or, whatever you do.
Patches, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Patches. Yeah. All that. You could do all that stuff. But if you're not treating the ADHD that's causing those tendencies, you may not quit. Now, I quit smoking 25 years ago, and I quit drinking almost 5 years ago. And I did so both before being diagnosed with ADHD. So it's not to say it's not possible,
Right.
but it can definitely hinder those things. So those bad habits. So.
And that's where I feel like the mental health, like the therapy part that sometimes I feel gets overlooked because that's what we do, right? We're always like, okay, this is the problem, but I mean, a good therapist will kind of be like, well, what's underneath it? And that's how it is with substance use. Okay, like substance use is a diagnosis, but usually there's like a reason why we're drinking. Like we're sad or depressed, that's our coping mechanism. Something is happening. Maybe it is dopamine seeking. But if you can't just fix this, you could put a band-aid on it, but eventually it's going to resurface in some way. And so like that's how, like, you could put that with anything. And so like why, so you're not turning in your assignment, like what's happening underneath, right? Like what is it that's happening that's keeping us from doing it? Is it like, are we having negative thoughts about it? Is it too big? Are we assuming that it's going to get done the night before? Like, do we need that urgency? Is that what we need? Like, how can we build that sooner, right? Like, it's figuring out what's underneath it is so much more important, just because it's not as like, it's not clear cut at all, ever. I don't think any of my clients have the same situations or the same solutions or the same difficulties. Like, it's so different. That's why I love what I do, because it's fun. I get to problem solve. I get to do like figure out some creative things. And so but at the end of it, it's like there's always something more. And I think that's where like the emotions come in, and our sleep and our eating and our like all of those things. We can't do it perfectly, but I imagine if you sleep a little bit better, we might function a little bit better, right? Or if like even hormones, we haven't even touched that. Like there's so many things, right? So it's like trying to see that all of these pieces are interconnected, I think is one of the biggest things that I try to share with my clients, of just like, it's not just ADHD.
Well, yeah, in a way, it's like in marketing as well. Or even in sales too. You're not trying to sell the glasses. Let's say you're trying to sell to the person getting migraines because they're having trouble reading, or they're spending all day. These are blue blockers, so that you're spending all day staring at a computer screen, and you've got a migraine, or whatever. You've got headaches, or your eyes are blurring, or whatever. You're selling to the problem. So in a weird way, it's almost like doing an ADHD assessment without telling people it's an ADHD assessment, but instead it's an assessment to, pulling this out of my rear here, but like where it's like, take this assessment and learn how to quit smoking or learn how to lose weight or learn how to like all the things that we all want to do, right? We all want to lose weight. We all want to quit our bad vices. We all want to sleep better. Like, but doing it in a way, it's almost like the wording should be something like, tired of staying up all night, want to lose an extra X pounds or quit, whatever, maybe it's ADHD,
Yeah.
just so like, wait, what? ADHD causes what? Because a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
They just think it's like the Bart Simpson running around the classroom.
Yes. And it's wild that it's like connected in so many ways. Like people get mad at me. My kid gets mad at me too. Like we were on vacation and we're Ubering everywhere. And of course, you have conversations with your Uber and they ask, what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go on a whole spiel about ADHD and like I'll somehow connect it to them. And I'll be like, have you thought about this?
That turn you made back there. Hey, you want to slow down a little bit? Yeah. Now tell me, so you were doing this training recently. Tell me about that. What was that training about?
So basically, we're training other mental health professionals how to diagnose, how to treat ADHD. So we go over what ADHD is, kind of the myths, the things that are on the DSM, things that are not on the DSM, that hopefully will eventually be on the DSM. Then we go over what it's like to diagnose a child and like what that, like we walk through kind of that as a mental health professional, as a usually LPC, social worker, a master's level, what we can do, what are our limits. And because many people don't know, but therapists can diagnose ADHD. And so depending on what the client needs, because there's rules for some, if you need to take like an MCAT or something like that, sometimes you don't, or any like higher level testing, or some universities don't accept master's level diagnosis. They want a neuropsychological evaluation, which is thousands of dollars that often people can't do. And then like they don't get to get their accommodations, and that limits people. So
and also they can't get medication either, can they?
Right.
Because you can't prescribe, right? You can diagnose or So that's the other side of it, is in order to get the medication you may need, like stimulants or what have you. There's that piece of it too. So that's really interesting. So, and as far as, I was going to ask you, as far as like misinformation or confusion or common misnomers or whatever about ADHD, what are some of the common things that you see or hear about? Or is that something that was covered in the training at all?
It is, like, as far as what we have them do at first is like we want to see what they think about ADHD in general, right? And of course, it usually comes back to it's a childhood diagnosis, like only little boys have it. It's the kid running around the room, they're lazy, like all of those, like the negative things. And by the end of it, our goal is to change their perspective, which is like perspective. That's why I named my practice what I named it, Rising Perspective. I want to change the view of ADHD.
That's great. I love that. Yeah.
And so at the end of it, what we want to do is like, see, it's not that they're lazy. It's like they're unmotivated, right? Like, and that's always a question I ask people: is it lazy or is it unmotivated? Like, which one is it? And so it's just like those mirror traits that Paolo talks about, of just like seeing it differently, right? Like once you change your perspective of like, my kid's just not being defiant, he's not being a jerk, like he's really struggling, like he's really having a hard time getting his room cleaned, or really struggling to regulate his emotion, like he doesn't mean to just yell, right? It's just happening. And when you change that, it changes your dynamic with your kid, with your relationship with your partner, with your friends, right? I tell my clients all the time, like they try to stop themselves from texting people or something. I'm like, let them know, like you're struggling, like tell them if you feel comfortable, right? Like let them know what's going on and that you care about them and you love them. But sometimes you get distracted. Sometimes it's hard to respond. And sometimes you overthink some of the things, right? Like this authenticity part sometimes that we try to hide, but how impactful it is, because then we're not allowing people to make assumptions. We're just giving them the information, and like what they do with that information, and we might not like it. Some people might not be very nice about it, but at least you're being authentic and you're giving that information. And like the people that matter, they'll understand and they'll love you regardless.
Yeah, I
So,
love that. That's great. Um,
mhm.
is there anything that I didn't ask you about, or topics that you want to mention? Well, as we wind it down, I can't believe how fast the time's going.
I know. I think I just like wanting to hone in for sure on what therapists can do with
Mhm.
ADHD, just
Yeah.
because there is that idea. I think there's an idea that either like you're a therapist and just with that training you should be able to deal with ADHD. Like, probably not, right?
Mm.
For sure, I encourage all therapists to screen for ADHD. And I'm pretty, if it's the ASRS, the one that you have on your website,
Hmm. Yeah.
probably anyone could do that, right? Like you can give that to somebody and have them do that screener. And if the score shows that there's potentially ADHD, like refer
Yeah.
out, address it, do something,
Yeah.
right? Don't just, a lot of times, like we don't look at it at all and it's there. And then we realize we're treating this anxiety, we're treating this depression, it's not going away. And it's like, because something else is happening.
Yeah.
So if you're a therapist, screen for ADHD, reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions about ADHD in general, referrals, anything like that. Like I love to help, especially because there's states that I just can't practice in. So if you're in a state that I can't practice in, like I would love to help in some way. Um,
What
so
other
yeah,
states you're licensed in?
in
Texas.
Texas and New Mexico. I
Okay.
also have a therapist that's in Kansas, but yeah.
And I have no idea about this. Why is it that you couldn't? I mean, ADHD is not different in New York or
Right.
Tennessee for that
It's
matter.
it's
What?
a legal thing because of our licensing. So we're only licensed in certain states. Hopefully, there's a pact in psychology does it. Psychologists can now be in this pact and they can basically have reciprocity around different states that are in this pact. The counseling world, they're trying to do that. Unfortunately, I'm in a state that's not on there. So Texas doesn't want to be on that pact.
All right.
So it's a legal thing. It's annoying. I do also have like the coaching part, but I feel like it limits me still because I like the
Yeah.
therapy part of it all. So
So what you're
um,
saying, just so I'm clear, so what you're saying
yeah,
is that there's a legal thing, as in legally, like insurance probably won't cover it if it's in a different, you're licensed in a different state. Like what? Like, is there a reason? I mean, there's so many. It's a whole different podcast episode to talk about this
Mhm.
country's crazy healthcare
Yeah,
or
it's
lack thereof.
ridiculous.
Um, yeah, because I would think supply and demand, right? I would think like if there's a need for ADHD therapists in Texas, then there should be an opportunity for more therapists to move to Texas. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, in theory, they could get licensed, right?
Yeah, but it's
But it shouldn't
hard
be
and
that
money.
difficult. Like I remember,
Right.
coming from Canada, there's a shortage of doctors, for example, and I think more moving back there now or moving there. But that's a different story
A
because
different story. Take
they
me
still,
with you.
yeah, you're right, yeah. That's another topic too. But I remember like growing up, like taking a taxi and the cab drivers like from anywhere else, let's say some like African country or something. And he's like, we would be talking about whatever. And I'd say like, what it would come up. I would say like, what did you do back home? Like before
Mhm.
moving to Canada. And he'd be like, oh, I was a surgeon or something. I'd be
Mhm.
like, and
Yes.
now you're a cab driver. Like
Yeah.
I know medicine and medical. I mean, there's different levels and different countries and different styles and all of that. But, God knows we need more medical professionals, be it doctors,
Yes.
therapists, whatever. But I mean, the more, the better, in my humble opinion. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
odd.
It's
It's odd to me.
basically like every state has its own requirements for licensing or to be licensed. And so luckily I'm only licensed in New Mexico because I happen to be grandfathered in to there's this really hard test that you have to take in order to get that license. And
Mm,
so I was luckily to be grandfathered in before they changed that. So I have my New Mexico license, but I'm originally licensed in Texas. I looked into California. California is probably one of the hardest ones to do. You have to do like a whole, it's not that it's not impossible. It's just a lot of work. Like they have different requirements. You have to take certain courses, different classes, and different like, it's almost like you have to get more hours again to like prove that you can work in a different state, which is wild because it's like mental health, basically, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's mainly like ethical, legal things, and because I'm on the border of Texas and New Mexico, before I was licensed in New Mexico, it was such like a pain because we're literally 40 minutes away, but from the nearest New Mexico city, like you could literally walk near New Mexico and like there's a house there, but you could work in El Paso, which I'm sure many states have that. But like technically you weren't supposed to see that person unless they're in Texas. Like you can't see another person. Like I could be anywhere, but the client has to be in that state, which is wild because I'm like, what's the point? At first, it used to be like a safety thing of like making sure that if there was any like suicidality or anything, like you could get them help in some way, which makes sense. But like Texas is huge, so like some of my clients are farther right now than like Las Cruces. So I'm like, it just didn't make sense.
What about the virtual, BetterHelp and all these virtual therapists? Like, how does that work? How are they able to operate virtually? I have no idea. Like, I mean, I understand virtually, but like how?
I think they just have different, like they have therapists in every state. So just depending on where you're at, where you're located, you have a therapist in that state who you're working with. Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, technically, like now I have a therapist under me who's in Kansas, so I could do that. I could hire somebody who is licensed in a different state to kind of expand, but I wouldn't be able to see them like they would.
Yeah.
So, but in my practice, I'm trying to make it an ADHD only therapy. Not only, but like that's our specialty. And I basically like give them kind of my rundown, how I do things, what are some of my strategies. They can talk with me and ask me like, what would you do in this situation? Like I am kind of consulting all of these. So that's kind of my way of helping or getting into that. But because I do know that we need more ADHD therapists. And so
definitely do. Victoria, this has been amazing. How can people get a hold of you and reach out, and regardless of what state, say hello?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So you can follow me on my social media, Rising Perspective Counseling. It's rising.perspective.counseling, I think, but you'll find it. You could also sign up on my email newsletter. We're going to start sending out some cool ADHD stuff out there. I post a lot of, if y'all are Swifties, I like to do some Taylor Swift ADHD content.
Nice.
So
Okay, cool. And what's your website?
risingperspectivecounseling.com.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Wise Squirrels. Please make sure you follow the show so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed the show, leave a review, please, and visit wisesquirrels.com/love for bonus content, audio comments that you can leave, membership information, free coaching, sponsorship details, booking information, and much more. Drop by wisesquirrels.com/love. Check out the link in the episode description below and explore now. Thanks again for listening.
Hey, this is Dr. George Sachs, co-founder of Inflow, a proud sponsor of Wise Squirrels. If you have ADHD, you know how tough it can be to stay on top of, mostly everything. That's why we created Inflow, an app designed by expert clinicians and people with ADHD to help you understand your brain, build habits that actually stick, and feel less alone in the process. Get the support you need with Inflow. Head to wisesquirrels.com/inflow to check it out.